The spotlight hit my face as I stepped onto the stage at the International Digital Forensics Conference. 3,000 cybersecurity professionals fell silent, their eyes fixed on me, not because I was some renowned expert, but because of what I was about to reveal. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the microphone. What I discovered on my ex's iPhone wasn't just deleted messages or hidden photos, I began, my voice echoing through the massive hall. It was the systematic documentation of a double life that had been happening right under my nose for 8 months. A meticulous psychological operation executed by the woman I planned to marry. The room fell completely silent. These were cybersecurity experts, people who thought they'd seen everything in the digital world: corporate espionage, identity theft, cryptocurrency heists. But even they were visibly disturbed by what I was about to share. The evidence I had recovered had not only ended my 5-year relationship, but had fundamentally changed how I viewed human connection and digital privacy forever. In the audience, I could see people leaning forward in their seats, completely captivated by the horrifying personal nightmare I was about to unfold. But let me back up and tell you how it all started, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how the digital footprints we leave behind never truly disappear, no matter how carefully we try to erase them. And it's about how technology can reveal the darkest truths about the people we think we know better than anyone in the world. My name is Alex Mitchell. I've spent the last decade as a digital forensics specialist, working primarily with law enforcement agencies to recover evidence from devices in criminal cases. I've extracted data from the phones of drug traffickers, reconstructed deleted emails in financial fraud investigations, and recovered seemingly lost evidence that helped put away some genuinely dangerous people. I thought I'd seen it all, or at least I thought I understood the depths of human deception. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days digging through strangers' digital lives, meticulously piecing together the fragments of truth they tried to hide, never once thinking I'd have to use those same skills in my personal life. Kate and I had been together for 5 years, living in our downtown apartment with views of the city skyline we both loved. We'd met at a mutual friend's wedding. I was the socially awkward tech guy at table 7. She was the charming, outgoing bridesmaid who somehow found my random facts about data encryption endearing rather than weird. She was brilliant, a clinical psychologist with her own thriving practice specializing in relationship counseling, of all things, but surprisingly technophobic for someone our age. Technology is changing faster than our brains can adapt, she'd often say when explaining her reluctance to embrace the digital world. She used her iPhone for the basics: calls, texts, social media, but always joked about how technology was my domain. She'd regularly hand me her phone to fix settings or update apps, saying, "I don't know how any of this works and I don't want to." Looking back, I should have seen the red flags in what I initially found endearing. The woman who could analyze complex human behaviors and relationship patterns to a surgical degree somehow couldn't figure out how to update an app. It didn't add up, but love has a way of blinding us to inconsistencies. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but whose is? We had our routines, our inside jokes, our weekend traditions. Sunday morning coffee at the corner cafe, followed by walks along the riverfront. We were saving for a house in the suburbs, talking about marriage and even preliminary discussions about kids' names. Kate was particularly fond of the name Eliza, for a girl, after her grandmother. I can still remember how her eyes would light up when talking about our future together, until 3 months ago, when everything changed. Here's where things get interesting, and where you'll want to pay close attention, because the first sign that something was wrong came in the most ordinary way possible, the kind of detail most people would overlook completely. It was a random Tuesday evening in March when Kate came home unusually late from work. Nothing dramatic, just about an hour later than normal. When I asked about it while we were preparing dinner, pasta primavera, I remember distinctly, she mentioned having a new client whose session ran long. No big deal. She seemed slightly more animated than usual, her cheeks flushed, which she attributed to rushing home in the cold spring air. But then I noticed something odd. She had placed her phone face down on the counter, something she never did. Kate was always careful with her phone, always kept it in her purse or pocket when not using it. This small change in behavior triggered something in my mind, the same instinct that had helped me crack cases at work. That feeling when a tiny detail just doesn't align with established patterns. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I chopped bell peppers. "Of course," she replied, smiling that warm smile I'd fallen for years ago. "Just a little tired. New clients are always draining. You have to establish trust from scratch." That night, while Kate was in the shower, the water running at precisely the pressure she liked, which I'd fixed the previous weekend, I glanced at her phone. The screen was locked, of course, but there was a notification preview from an app I didn't recognize. Just a simple message. Message deleted. Nothing else. The sender wasn't visible, and the app icon was unfamiliar. When Kate got out of the shower, wrapped in the blue towel she always used, her hair wet and clinging to her neck, I casually asked about her day again, and she gave me the same answer, but with slightly different details. The client was now a referral from Dr. Brenner rather than simply new, and the session had been emotionally draining rather than running long. I didn't sleep well that night. These tiny inconsistencies kept replaying in my mind like a skipping record. And here's the thing about being a forensic investigator that changes how you move through the world. You're trained to notice patterns, to spot when things don't align, to recognize when information has been altered or selectively presented. Most people would have brushed it off, attributed it to simple misspeaking or unimportant details. But I couldn't. It was like seeing a single pixel out of place in an otherwise perfect image. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. The next morning, Kate left early for what she said was a breakfast meeting with colleagues from the Psychiatric Association. She kissed me goodbye, lingering slightly longer than usual, told me she loved me, and headed out the door. As soon as I heard her car pull away, the distinctive sound of the slight muffler rattle she'd been meaning to fix, I felt a knot form in my stomach. What I was about to do crossed both professional and personal boundaries, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. You won't believe what happened next, and how a simple check of digital records turned into the most disturbing investigation of my entire career. One that would reveal layers of deception I never thought possible from someone I trusted completely. I had Kate's phone passcode. We had shared them years ago for convenience, a gesture of transparency and trust. But I didn't need to unlock her phone for what I was planning. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out my forensic toolkit, the same professional-grade equipment I used for my job. Within minutes, I had connected her laptop, which she rarely used, preferring her iPad for most tasks, to my system. She had logged into her iCloud on it months ago and never logged out. This was my entry point, a digital window into the synchronized data of her digital life. The first thing I checked was her location history. Most people don't realize that iCloud keeps a record of where your devices have been, even when you think that data is gone. Apple calls this significant locations, and while it's ostensibly used to provide personalized services, it's also a detailed map of your movements. What I found made my blood run cold. a physical sensation of ice spreading through my veins. For the past 2 months, Kate had been regularly visiting an address across town, an apartment complex in the trendy West Side district that I'd never heard her mention. These visits always occurred during her supposed late client sessions or colleague meetings, and typically lasted between 2 and 4 hours. But that was just the beginning. I told myself there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe she was seeing a therapist herself. Many psychologists do. Maybe she had a friend there she hadn't mentioned. Maybe it was a professional consultation group that met in someone's home. I needed more evidence before jumping to conclusions. The same methodical approach I'd use in any investigation. I dug deeper, accessing her iCloud backup. Most people don't realize that even when you delete a message, photo, or app from your phone, a copy often remains in your backup, especially if the backup was created before the deletion. It's like throwing away a document but keeping a photocopy in your filing cabinet and forgetting the copy exists. The deleted app that had sent the notification I saw, it was a secure messaging platform called Confide, one that advertises end-to-end encryption and auto-deleting messages. Messages that disappear after being read once, leaving no trace, or so they claim. Not the kind of app Kate, with her self-proclaimed technological ineptitude, would normally use or even know about. The backup contained metadata about the app's usage, timestamps showing when it was active, but not the actual message content due to the encryption. She had been using it almost daily for the past 3 months, often late at night when I was asleep or during her lunch breaks. My heart was pounding as I went further down the rabbit hole. My professional skills now turned toward my own relationship. My hands were steady as they always were during investigations, but my mind was racing, already constructing and dismissing possible explanations. This is where things got really unsettling, and I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. The first concrete evidence that my life wasn't what I thought it was. I recovered fragments of deleted WhatsApp messages, not complete conversations, but enough pieces to see a pattern. Messages to someone saved simply as J, with phrases like, "He doesn't suspect anything," and "I'll tell him I'm working late again." References to our place and counting down the days. In one recovered message fragment, Kate had written, "He's so trusting. It almost makes me feel bad." Almost. The timestamp showed this was sent just 2 weeks ago, on a night when she'd cuddled against me on the couch, telling me how lucky she felt to have me in her life. At this point, I felt physically sick, a cold sweat breaking out across my forehead. The evidence was mounting, but I still didn't have the complete picture. I needed to know exactly what was happening, who Jay was, and how long this had been going on. Every forensic instinct told me there was more to find, that I had only scratched the surface of whatever deception was taking place. The next discovery changed everything and revealed the true depth of the deception, the moment when this went from a possible affair to something far more calculated and sinister. Using specialized recovery software that I typically reserve for high-priority criminal cases, I managed to retrieve deleted photos from her iCloud that hadn't yet been permanently purged from the servers. Most were innocuous, random screenshots, duplicate photos she'd cleaned up. But then I found a folder that had been deleted 6 weeks ago. Inside were dozens of photos of Kate with a man I'd never seen before, tall, with dark hair, and the kind of confidence that comes from old money, judging by his clothes and the settings of the photos. They weren't just friendly photos. They were intimate, the kind you take when you're in a relationship. Kate looking at him with the same expression she used to have when looking at me. Based on the metadata embedded in the digital files, these photos dated back 7 months. while we were still very much together, still talking about our future, still sleeping in the same bed every night. There were photos of them at restaurants I recognized, including the Italian place where we had celebrated our anniversary just 2 months ago. There were photos of them in what appeared to be an upscale apartment, presumably the West Side location from her location history, lounging on a leather sofa, cooking in a sleek kitchen, even a few shots from a weekend trip to the coast. In every image, Kate looked happier than I'd seen her in months, her smile reaching her eyes in a way it rarely did anymore when she was with me. But here's the most chilling part, the revelation that made me realize this wasn't just an affair. It was something far more calculated and cold-blooded than a simple case of infidelity. Among the recovered files was a document, a detailed timeline created in pages and last modified 6 weeks ago, outlining steps for what Kate called the transition. It included dates for finding a new apartment, gradually moving her important possessions out of our place, and even a script for breaking up with me. The document was dated 4 months ago, but the timeline indicated that the conversation was scheduled for next month. Nearly 5 months of planning an exit while pretending everything was normal. The document included bullet points like April 15th, begin transferring personal documents to safety deposit box. April 30, move remaining jewelry and family heirlooms to new apartment. May 10th, transfer final financial assets to separate account. May 22, the conversation with Alex, use emotional distancing script. June 1st, complete move, have Jason's friends help with furniture. There were also financial records showing she had been setting aside money in a separate account I knew nothing about, researching how to divide shared assets in a way that favored her, and even notes from a consultation with a lawyer about how to handle the lease on our apartment, which was in both our names. One note simply read, "Leverage Alex's aversion to conflict. He'll likely give in on apartment to avoid prolonged disagreement." I sat staring at my computer screen for what felt like hours, trying to process what I'd found. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had been methodically planning to leave me for months while maintaining a completely different relationship on the side. Every "I love you," every conversation about our future, every intimate moment we'd shared during this time, all while this elaborate exit strategy was in motion. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching myself discover these things as if it were happening to someone else. When I finally heard Kate's car in the driveway that evening, the same rattle of the muffler now sounding ominous rather than familiar, I had to make a decision about what to do with what I knew. What would you do if you discovered your partner had been living a double life? Would you confront them immediately, emotions raw and unfiltered? Would you continue investigating to learn the full extent of the deception? Or would you simply pack your bags and disappear? I decided confrontation was inevitable, but I needed to be strategic. Rather than laying all my cards on the table at once, I started with a simple question when she walked through the door, shopping bag in hand from what was supposedly a quick stop at the market after work. "How was your meeting this morning?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. I was sitting at the kitchen island, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of me, something she should have registered as unusual since I rarely drank on weeknights. "Good," she said, setting down her bag and unloading a few groceries. Organic apples, the specialty bread I liked, a bottle of the wine we often shared on Friday nights. Such perfect domestic normalcy. Productive. We're restructuring how we handle referrals between practices. Should streamline things. I nodded, watching her movements carefully, now hyper-aware of every gesture, every flicker of expression. "At the office on 3rd Street? Yeah," she said, not meeting my eyes as she checked her phone. The same phone that contained the digital breadcrumbs of her betrayal. Where else would it be? That's when I slid my laptop across the kitchen counter toward her. On the screen was a map showing her location history, not at her office on 3rd Street, but at the apartment complex across town in the West Side District. The timestamps were clearly visible, 7:15 a.m. to 9:40 a.m. The color drained from her face, a physical reaction she couldn't control, her body betraying the truth before her words could form a lie. "You're tracking me now. What the hell, Alex?" Her voice had an edge I'd rarely heard before, defensive, almost aggressive. "I'm not tracking you," I said, still maintaining that eerie calm that comes from shock. "I'm a digital forensic specialist, Kate. Did you forget that? Did you really think deleting messages and photos would be enough? That secure apps would protect your secrets?" What happened next was not what I expected, and it showed me a side of Kate I'd never seen before, or perhaps more accurately, a side she'd kept carefully hidden for 5 years. Instead of more denials or even anger at being caught, her entire demeanor changed. It was like watching someone remove a mask. The warm, somewhat scattered woman I knew disappeared in an instant, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Her posture straightened, her eyes hardened, and when she spoke, her voice had a clinical detachment that sent chills down my spine. "Well," she said, her voice eerily calm as she placed her phone face down on the counter, the same gesture that had first triggered my suspicions. "I guess this saves me a month of pretending. How much do you know?" I was stunned by her response. No apologies, no explanations, just a businesslike acknowledgement that her timeline had been accelerated. No attempt to salvage anything, or even to deny what was now plainly obvious. "I know about Jay," I said, struggling to keep my voice from breaking. "I know about the apartment in West Side. I know you've been planning to leave for months while lying to my face every single day." She actually smiled, a small, tight smile that never reached her eyes. It was the kind of smile you might give when acknowledging a worthy opponent in chess. "Jason," she corrected. "His name is Jason Sullivan. And yes, I've been planning my exit carefully. I'm a planner, Alex. You know that about me." The casual way she confirmed my worst fears hit me like a physical blow. I had expected denials, tears, perhaps even remorse, not this cold acknowledgement. 7 months, Kate," I said, my voice finally breaking slightly under the weight of emotion. 7 months of living a double life. Why not just end things when you met him? Why the elaborate deception? Why keep telling me you loved me, that you wanted a future with me? Her answer chilled me to the bone and revealed the third major revelation of this nightmare, one that would fundamentally change how I viewed not just Kate, but our entire 5-year relationship. "Because it wasn't convenient yet," she said, as if explaining something to a child who was struggling with a simple concept. "I needed time to get everything in order. And honestly, I wasn't sure about Jason at first. I needed to make sure he was a better option before letting go of my backup plan." She paused, looking directly into my eyes for the first time since entering the kitchen. That would be you, by the way. I was her backup plan. 5 years together, and I was insurance in case her new relationship didn't work out. Everything I thought we had, the love, the trust, the shared dreams, had been reduced to a contingency plan. I felt physically ill, the room seeming to tilt slightly as I processed her words. "So none of it was real?" I asked, hating how vulnerable I sounded. "These past 7 months, all the I love yous, all our plans for the future, that was all just, what? An act until you were ready to make your move?" Kate reached for an apple from the bag, inspected it casually, and took a deliberate bite before answering. It wasn't all an act, Alex. That's a bit melodramatic. I did love you, in my way. But love isn't enough, is it? Jason offers me things you can't. A certain lifestyle. Connections in circles that matter to me professionally. It's not personal. It's pragmatic. But the final discovery was still to come, and it would turn my understanding of our entire relationship upside down, revealing a truth so disturbing that it would haunt me for months afterward. As Kate and I continued our confrontation in the kitchen, the same space where we'd cooked countless meals together, shared wine and laughter, planned our future, she became increasingly clinical, almost proud of how she'd managed to compartmentalize her life so effectively. When I asked how she could do this, how she could lie so convincingly for so long, her answer was both professional and deeply disturbing. It's not that difficult, especially with someone who thinks they know you so well they stop really looking, she said, leaning against the counter with a relaxed posture that suggested we were discussing something as mundane as weekend plans. People see what they expect to see. You expected to see your loving girlfriend, so that's what you saw. You never questioned the narrative we established. That's how relationships work, Alex. We create stories together and then live in them. I just created a different story with Jason while maintaining yours until it was time to transition. Something about her tone, the detached, almost academic way she described manipulating me, made me ask a question I hadn't planned to. Has there been anyone else? Before Jason? Kate hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. A microsecond of calculation flickered across her face. I recognized it from interrogations I'd witnessed. That moment when someone decides how much truth to reveal. You're good at your job, Alex. Why don't you find out? She said, a hint of challenge in her voice. Since you've already invaded my privacy, you might as well be thorough. That night, after Kate packed a bag and left, presumably for Jason's apartment, though she didn't specify where she was going, I did exactly that. I went back to my forensic tools and dug deeper, expanding my search to cover our entire relationship. I worked through the night, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline, betrayal, and professional determination that kept me going until dawn broke over the city skyline outside my apartment windows. What I found shattered any remaining illusion I had about the woman I had loved. The digital evidence painted a picture so different from the relationship I thought I had that it was like discovering I'd been living in a simulation for 5 years. Kate had been unfaithful multiple times throughout our 5 years together, not just with Jason. Different men, some one-time encounters during conferences she attended, others lasting weeks or months. Each time she had meticulously covered her tracks, or so she thought. There was Mark, a colleague from a psychiatric conference in Boston 3 years ago. There was David, a wealthy client's brother she'd seen for nearly 4 months 2 years ago. There was even a brief reconnection with her ex from college during a trip she told me was a girls' weekend with her friends from graduate school. Each relationship overlapped with ours. Each was conducted with the same careful compartmentalization she'd shown with Jason. But the most devastating discovery wasn't the extent of her infidelity. It was a series of voice memos she had recorded, notes to herself about how to better manipulate me. In her professional, clinical voice, she detailed my insecurities and how to exploit them, noted which lies I was most likely to believe, and even congratulated herself on successful deceptions. These weren't just passing thoughts. They were methodical analyses of my psychological vulnerabilities, recorded with the same care she presumably took with her clinical notes. "Alex's abandonment issues make him easy to manage," she said in one recording from over 2 years ago, her voice as casual as if she were noting observations about the weather. "Just the right amount of reassurance after pulling away, and he's more committed than ever. It's textbook, really." Today I tested the theory again, canceled our plans last minute, then called an hour later telling him how much I missed him. He was so grateful for my attention that he completely forgot to be upset about the canceled plans. These patterns are so predictable. Another recording from just 6 months ago. Alex asked again about starting a family today. I've managed to defer the conversation for another few months with the career development excuse. He's so supportive of my professional goals that he never questions when I use them as a reason to delay personal milestones. It's almost too easy. Meanwhile, I need to make a decision about Jason's offer to accompany him to the London conference. Alex would never be able to take the time off work, which makes the logistics simpler. As a forensic investigator, I had recovered countless pieces of incriminating evidence over the years. I had helped put away criminals by revealing their digital secrets. But nothing had prepared me for finding out that my relationship, what I considered the most real, most authentic part of my life, had been a carefully orchestrated psychological experiment. I wasn't a partner to Kate. I was a subject, a case study, a puzzle box she enjoyed solving and manipulating. The confrontation with Kate and the discoveries that followed happened 3 months ago. Since then, I've had to rebuild not just my life, but my understanding of trust, love, and human connection. How do you move forward when your reality has been so fundamentally undermined? How do you trust again when the person who knew you most intimately used that knowledge as a weapon? I moved out of our apartment. I couldn't stand to be in that space anymore, surrounded by memories that now seemed fraudulent. Every photo, every shared possession felt contaminated by deception. I found a smaller place downtown, closer to my office, and started the process of untangling our shared life. Kate made it surprisingly easy. Once her deception was exposed, she had no interest in maintaining any pretense. The woman who had once talked about building a life with me now treated our separation with the same clinical efficiency she'd used to plan her exit. But here's the thing about digital forensics that applies to life as well. Even when something appears to be completely destroyed, fragments remain. From those fragments, you can reconstruct, rebuild, and eventually recover. That's what I've been doing these past months, piecing together a new understanding of myself, one that isn't defined by Kate's manipulation. In a strange twist of fate, my experience with Kate led to an unexpected professional opportunity. The presentation I mentioned at the beginning of this story, the one where I stood before thousands of cybersecurity experts, was about personal security and relationship deception. I was invited to speak at the conference after an article I wrote about my experience went viral in tech circles. Digital forensics, in the age of intimate deception, became one of the most read pieces in Wired magazine's online history, touching a nerve with thousands of readers who had experienced their own versions of technological betrayal. I've since developed a specialized practice helping people who suspect they're being manipulated or deceived by partners. It's a unique intersection of digital forensics and relationship investigation that I never imagined would become my focus. The waiting list for my services is now months long. Turns out there are a lot of people out there with that same instinct, that same sense that something isn't quite right. That same single pixel out of place in their perfect picture. As for Kate, last I heard, she and Jason didn't last. A mutual friend told me that once I was out of the picture, she no longer needed her better option. Apparently, Jason discovered his own inconsistencies in her stories. his own single pixels out of place. I've blocked her on every platform and created digital safeguards that would make even the most determined contact impossible. Sometimes I wonder if there's a voice memo somewhere on her phone, analyzing what went wrong with her plan, a clinical dissection of her miscalculations. You might be wondering if I regret using my professional skills to investigate Kate. The answer is complicated. I violated her privacy, yes. I crossed a line professionally, but I also uncovered a truth that would have remained hidden, a truth that, however painful, allowed me to escape a relationship built on manipulation and lies. Without those digital forensic skills, I might still be living in blissful ignorance, planning a future with someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient backup plan and psychological experiment. The experience has taught me that in our digital age, we leave evidence of our true selves everywhere. No matter how careful we are, no matter how many messages we delete or photos we hide, the truth has a way of leaving traces. For someone who knows where to look, those traces can tell the complete story, often a very different story than the one we present to the world or to our loved ones. So here's my advice to anyone listening. Live authentically, because pretending to be someone you're not in the digital age is ultimately futile. Our devices know the truth. They track our locations, record our communications, document our choices. And if you sense that something in your relationship isn't right, that single pixel out of place in an otherwise perfect image, trust your instinct. The truth may be more accessible than you think. What about you? Have you ever discovered something digital that changed your understanding of a relationship? Or do you have questions about how to protect your own digital privacy, both from strangers and from those closest to you? Let me know in the comments, and remember, in our connected world, the delete button is just an illusion. The truth is always there, waiting to be found by someone who knows how to look. Thank you for listening to my story. It hasn't been easy to share, but I hope it helps someone else recognize the warning signs I missed. Digital forensics revealed the truth about my relationship and ultimately set me free from a deception I might never have otherwise discovered. Here's an ironic epilogue to my story. 2 weeks after my presentation at the cybersecurity conference, I received an encrypted email from a name I didn't recognize. When I opened it, there was a single sentence. "She did the same thing to me 3 years before you." Attached was a digital journal from a man named Thomas, Kate's boyfriend before me. His story was eerily similar to mine. The same patterns, the same manipulations, even some of the same phrases in the voice memos she'd recorded about him. Kate hadn't just been practicing these techniques on me. She'd been refining them over years, across multiple relationships. Thomas and I met for coffee. He's now happily married with a newborn daughter, proof that there is life after Kate. We compared notes on our experiences, finding an unexpected camaraderie in our shared deception. The worst part, he told me, wasn't the cheating. It was realizing that someone had been studying me like a lab rat, finding my vulnerabilities and exploiting them. I couldn't have said it better myself. So if you're out there, feeling like something isn't quite right in your relationship, trust that feeling. The truth might be painful, but it's also freeing. And in the digital age, that truth is often just a few keystrokes away. The evidence doesn't lie, even when the people we love do.